It is the Anfield Wrap in association with RedsBet. RedsBet are partners. If you have signed up to RedsBet, do ensure that you've selected your account that you wish to get your donations to go to the charitable contributions that they make out of people's losses. If it isn't for you, that's absolutely fine. And be gamble aware, full stop around this. I am joined by Rob Gutmann, Paul Senior and Melissa Reddy to talk through Brighton versus Liverpool. So there's a couple of things I want to talk about. I want to start with going into a fair bit of detail in terms of watching the game develop. Mel, it seemed to me like Brighton decided that they weren't particularly interested in running the game, in taking the onus, even though they are the home side and they've got a good record at home, which we'll come on to. And Liverpool just decided to take complete control of the game, even though if at times you didn't feel as though they were trying to do a great deal with that control, they decided they were running the game.
It was a very difficult game in a sense of Brighton are quite comfortable in their approach, in stifling you and being prepared to maximise any chance, any half chance, any sort of opportunity that came their way, wait to punish any mistake. So when I watched the game, the first thing I thought of was the maturity from Liverpool, because they didn't look to force it when they didn't need to. And as a supporter, oftentimes you want them to force it because you want to see a goal, you want to see better chance creation or more chance creation. But I think they had to play in two minds. One, being comfortable in what they wanted to do, and the other is not giving Brighton a chance to be comfortable at all. And in saying that, they had to minimise risks. And I think that's why they were so safe in that first half. And when I was looking at the game, the thing that astounded me, there's two things we know about Brighton. They score at home. They last didn't score at home in the league in March. The other thing is they're the best team at set pieces in the league this season. At scoring from corners especially. They had their first corner. They only had two corners in the game. They had their first on 68 and then the second one straight after that. That Liverpool were able to restrict that element of Brighton's game. I think that for me, again, that word maturity.
Safe, Mel refers there to Brighton as being stifling. She says that Liverpool was safe in one sense, Rob, early on in the game. I think there is something where in a game like that one, in the context it was in, safe wasn't a battle of laughs for 45 minutes. I think this is there's a real, you can respond to a football match in a number of different ways, and I think one of the emotional responses to the game was, whilst it was ongoing, I just really wanted it to be put to bed. Like, I just wanted I wanted the 3 points in the bag. You know, my ideal scenario was going to be Liverpool at 2-0 up after 10 minutes. And then from there, you know, it just all gets played out and we can all relax and it all feels all right again. And that first 45 minutes, I think it was a hard watch. Yeah. Whilst then when I watched it back yesterday, I was like, well, what was hard about this? They don't have a shot. There was nothing to be worried about, and yet I genuinely had the feelings of constant worry in that 45.
Yeah, it's hard to judge because hindsight makes it look very much like a script that was followed perfectly by Liverpool. But having said that, it's not the first time a game's panned out this way this season. Watford, Burnley, both were similar-ish first halves where Liverpool had sterile control of the game. Breaking, I said to you earlier, I think it's a bit of a template you can take from a classic European away performance if you're doing 100% right, which is to break the spirit of the opposition. Because Brighton, I actually think the last 2 or 3 times we've played Brighton, they've been potent at phases in the game, and they score. Although we thrashed them last season, they actually create chances against us. At Anfield, they belatedly create a couple of chances, and we nearly throw points away late on. And they, as Mel said, they're very, very dangerous in the air. So to restrict them to 0 chances, 0 shots on target is not to be underestimated. You could argue, I think if you'd asked the manager at halftime, he goes, there's patience and there's maybe a tad too patient. There was times where we could have stepped it up. Having said that, I don't know, the trouble is a football match can seem a long time. Sometimes it can seem a very, very quick sequence of events. And when you get to halftime and you still haven't broken through, you can say, yeah, we've been patient, the game will open up. And that's what me and Ademelia were saying to each other on the concourse, trying to counsel each other. But in the home dressing room, you can also say, 45 minutes away from a really good point here. Let's more of this stoic defending. So I don't know is the answer. But I think, the proof is in the pudding. So I suppose, Neil, your analysis is right, ultimately.
Paul Senior.
Yeah, it was one of them performances I've envied for a long time, really. The ones where teams who ultimately go and win leagues and stuff just find a way of creating an opportunity or a moment of quality or whatnot, and it was nice to see Liverpool could do that. I sort of take everyone's point about the first half that it was a little bit placid, I suppose, and there wasn't much to write home about. But we never felt under any pressure. We didn't allow the home side to really get the crowd up or anything like that. So Liverpool always felt in control. And what surprised me coming out like after the game and sort of seeing match of the day and stuff like that was how many chances we did create, and that didn't feel so apparent in the ground. I didn't realise Shaqiri's miss was such a big miss. There wasn't like, I can't believe he's missed it in the away end. It just felt like a ball come across and it was a header. Nothing felt massive, but I wasn't, Rob's talking about himself and Adam counselling each other. I never really felt that nervous that it wouldn't come. I thought Liverpool sort of kicking towards the away fans and that end would start turning the screw, and ultimately they did.
I think why I use the word safe is because we found that the midfield, and Henderson particularly, was right on Virgil van Dijk and Fabinho, and I think that was in a sense because Fabinho was playing as a centre back for the first time for Liverpool.
The Trent injury before kickoff.
Yeah, the Trent injury just before kickoff. So I think the safety first was just ingrained in them because of the circumstance, because of the massiveness of the fixture, not in that it's Brighton away, but in that you've just lost to City, the lead's only 4 points, all eyes are on you, people, externally want you to crack. There has to be those big headlines that Liverpool are starting to feel the pressure. So I think all of that boils down into them thinking, whatever we do, let's not be too risky. That then created, I think, big gaps between the midfield and the attackers. And what we saw was, the ball went over the top too often because there were runners in behind Salah and Sadio, but there was nothing happening in between the lines. And that's an issue because if you're going to keep putting the ball over the top against, two quite big centre-halves for Brighton who are very good aerially, it's not always going to work. But I think Liverpool were clever in the sense that they knew what they absolutely did not want to do, and they had the conviction that they would create 1 or 2 or 3 moments that would give them the chance to win the game.
Those balls over the top, Mel, I thought, and again, this is as much a watching it back thing, but even at times during the game, I thought that was just trying to force them back 5 yards. That the way we'll get some more space in this, they're so compact and they were unbelievably narrow considering they were a 5. Then there's the 4, but the 4 and the 5 were really close together for Brighton. And I thought one of the reasons why those balls over the top were happening was just, let's just put some doubt in their minds. If they drop a few yards, it doesn't have to be many, then we've suddenly got a bit of space to play. But that's why I thought you saw all of, it's interesting looking at the passing stats, you saw all of Henderson, Van Dijk and Fabinho try that ball over the top, which is what made me think this could be and in the first half especially, this could be the instruction. This is how you just get them to not be able to sit quite where they want to. You just force them a bit.
I think the issue was it's a good tactic, but it happened too often.
Yeah.
And there wasn't variation. And I think the manager was looking for variation because you saw him on the touchline instruct them to, come on, play a bit. Give me something, anything in between the lines in the first half. And then second half, it's completely different. So definitely at halftime, he's spoken to everyone about their positioning and what they could do better. And I thought you saw it in Mohamed Salah's performance, especially the change between the first half to the second.
I want to talk about this with Salah, Rob. I think there's something in 2 things from Salah this season. First goals and second halves. I think he scored a lot of first goals, a lot of key goals in matches. He's not scored as many goals now, I think we can say that so far this season, as he did last, but he scored a lot of goals that have either been decisive or opened the scoring for Liverpool. The other thing as well is I think against both Brighton in the league, Brighton there and Wolves in the league, I think he's far more involved and dangerous in the second half. I think he's whether or not he's working people out, whether or not he's looking at some video footage at half-time, whether or not he's being pulled to one side, whether or not it's just taking him a little bit of time. I think he's having some unbelievable second halves in comparison to firsts, where he comes right alive and is prominent in the game.
Yeah, I think that kind of player who's going to be restricted for space and targeted for space is going to have more space in the second half, and in a sense they know that and they live for it. I also think you see tweaks in their positioning, in Salah's positioning. You know, when we're starting him very centrally, but he creates the goal from a right wing position, doesn't he? He looks for solutions wherever he can on the pitch. He's such a clever player. Yeah, he frustrated me first half. I thought, you're just not, you're our best player, but you're not in the game. But to find a way of getting into it, and he's the dominant player in the second half, is quite incredible. But yeah, you're right, it has become a pattern.
He's the dominant player of the second half, and that's everything goes through him, Paul. I think we're maybe missing exactly how, because it is quite unconventional in a few senses, how brilliant these number 9 performances are. That's a second half there where he's simultaneously the front of the attack, he's simultaneously the apex, and yet he's involved in so much that brings other people into play and creates space for them. You know, because he's not Fernando Torres and 6'1", or even Luis Suarez, where it's all action and channels and all of that sort of stuff. I think we're missing the sheer subtlety and excellence of this at times.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it, I suppose. The difference in him this year to last, whilst retaining the goals, is remarkable, really. I always used to think, if Salah didn't score, did he do much, in games? And he quite often scored, so he got away with it. You come out of the ground going, Salah didn't do anything, but he got to 2 goals, and that's what he's there for. Where now it's all round centre forward performances, and not one I really knew he had in this game, because I think sort of the limited idea I had of him is, if you can get the ball in behind to him, he's well quicker than anyone else, and he's quite composed in front of goal, he'll score. Or he's a bit of a poacher. He can do all the things that will ultimately result in just a goal. Whereas now running the game is different, and I don't know how much that's helped from having Firmino in behind him and doing a lot of selfless work, which he quite often does. But Salah's performances, while still being joint top goal scorer in the Premier League, are remarkable.
There's a cleverness, I think, Mel, and this is the thing I'm almost taking from this season, which, if you say it wasn't there last season, I'm now probably more of the view I at least was probably missing it a little bit. There's a real football intelligence, I think, with him, and I think he's almost the dominant intellect, certainly in an attacking sense, on the pitch for Liverpool in that second half, and therefore for both sides. He's so bright and so eager to see opportunity, and he just works things out as games wear on.
Yeah, absolutely. Jurgen Klopp actually, at the start of the season, when people were questioning Salah because the goal count wasn't as high, said he thinks he's playing better this season than he was last. And that was in terms of his all-round play, how he was linking up with his teammates better. There was less of a selfish edge and more of a, what do I need to do right now for the team, rather than, what do I need to do for my goal count. And I think, the thing about working out solutions, he's been targeted, obviously, as we all expected. And you look at that first half, every time the ball goes anywhere near him, Brighton are right on, not giving him anything, not giving him an inch. We saw it against Napoli as well. We've seen it many times where, as soon as the ball's anywhere in Salah's vicinity, you try and, kill the opportunity immediately. And the thing with that is, a lot of players can get frustrated by that and then end up becoming inconsequential in a game. And he actually, as the game progresses, thrives off it. And he's like, okay, that's the challenge. Here's how I'm going to circumvent this challenge. Here's how I'm going to get over it. And he does it in, not just with his speed, because I think that's what everybody fixates on, but the strength, the way he uses his body, the way he reads situations, his alertness. He's alive, Mohamed Salah, to even, 1/10 of a chance.
His feet are ridiculous, actually. Yeah. We don't talk about that often enough. He does have feet at times, like toes that twinkle like messages. He wins the penalty because he can move a ball between his feet. And
but also persistence. He wins the penalty because of the persistence. He's like, I'm not this is my opportunity now, and I'm not relinquishing this opening. It's mine, and he fights in that little spell to get the penalty.
Can I quickly talk about the penalty and the award of the penalty, and then the narrative that he might have dived, and that this is a recent phenomenon? Well, every time
us getting penalties is a recent phenomenon.
Every time he earns a penalty, the national narrative is now, did Salah dive? He goes down too easy. All this kind of crap. It annoys me because it's why, if you look at you've seen the stats that come out over the weekend, various people have put that Liverpool have had only 6 penalties since Christmas 17, whereas the likes of Palace and Leicester and whoever and Bournemouth.
I think that was 16. No,
it's 17. I've had 12, and there's this. And actually, it's not just us who suffer. The other big clubs are suffering, and it just shows us a clear correlation between between big clubs and referees not awarding penalties to big players.
Some of the pens that Sterling hasn't been given in the last 12 months are
absolutely
outrageous. To be honest, there was one at West Ham where he was basically, the lad nearly not just pulled into the turf, but nearly had his shorts off.
Yeah, but I think this is it. I think referees though are so scared because there's the one that's at Shakhtar at home, where he kicks the floor and gets a pen. And then,
but he doesn't ask for that, to be fair to Sterling.
No, I'm not saying it's wrong, but we used to have this with... there used to be the when Suarez gets a pen thing, wasn't there? Because he'll occasionally dive for one and that. But with Salah, I remember last season, people going, he was getting dragged back in the box and wasn't going down.
You were thinking, what on earth has to happen to Salah for him to get
one? But now I think he's aware of that. So, like, you can see he gets the first contact, and when he gets the second contact, he goes. It's almost like, you've got to give that. Sorry, Rob.
There's a simple statistic that should exist in the game. The teams that are scoring the most goals in a league should more or less be getting the most penalties, because simply they must be in the position. It just is a fact. If the teams that are scoring the lesser amounts of goals are getting the most penalties, something is very wrong. I think this is serious. I think VAR may begin to solve this.
But remember there was that, I can't quite remember who City were playing, but there was some game earlier this season where City just had the ball in the box for ages, and it was moving around, and it was a clip, and everyone was, I think it might have been West Ham or something, and everyone was taking the piss out of West Ham's defending. But the thing is, one of the reasons why they have the ball in the box for so long is they're terrified to make a tackle on them. They've just got the ball, and the thing that should happen is actually, just for everyone's dignity, eventually someone should just wallop somebody and maybe get the ball and go from there. Genuinely, because I think City score because they're just present in the penalty area, and it's an interesting bit to the penalty area, not the periphery. And I do sort of wonder if there is a little bit of a thing where there was a couple of times I thought during that game where Mane's got it in and around the box, and they're just not going to touch him under any circumstances. And I'm almost willing Sadio on to maybe do a bit more because they don't want to go near you, mate. And I do sort of wonder if those defenders are getting a bit cleverer in terms of they're just not going to get sucked in. As soon as we get inside that line, I'm not going to get sucked in, mate. And then what's happening now recently with Salah, I think it's been happening anyway, we've not been getting them, don't get me wrong, I think we've not been getting pens, but I do think there is an element of defenders standing forever.
Having said that, the more you're in the box, the more you're pinging around at pace. The chance of a missed time.
I do broadly agree with you.
Yeah, so I wouldn't mind if the stats were...
Exactly.
They're so extreme the other way. The cities, I think City, Liverpool, Spurs, all getting like 5s and 6s, whereas you've got Palaces and Brightons and Bournemouths getting 12s. Something's badly awry. And it just shows how mental refereeing is. I
do think there's a thing in refereeing now where they're trying not to look like they favour the big clubs too much.
That's clearly what's going on.
It's weird. Like I've seen at Anfield, it's almost like referees try and give the image that they're not a homer or no, we don't often talk.
But it's interesting that after this game, Brighton were talking about. Houghton, by the way, says it's a clear-cut pen. I don't know if it's post-match comments. It comes out, so it's a clear-cut pen. But he also did feel as though we were getting more of the 50-50 decisions. It felt
right in the ground. I understood where the frustration from Brighton was coming from, because we did seem to get the lion's share of the decisions, but we had the lion's share of the ball, and we had the lion's share of everything.
On that, I want to go back to Mel on that and actually run with that a little bit, because I think one of the reasons why, for instance, we're getting the lion's share of decisions is it's back to this thing that Brighton are so on the edge just to stay with Liverpool, and I think that's one of the reasons why, when you're on the edge is when fouls happen. That's when you just sort of, you're a little bit mistimed, you're a little bit late. You feel the need to use your hands where maybe you wouldn't normally, because you're being pushed to your limits. And it might not have looked to us watching at home or in the ground as though we were pushing Brighton to the limits, but Brighton are having to play in the red just to keep that at 1-0.
Yeah, and Paul makes a good point there. When you've got the majority of the play, the opposition have to try and, do something to, like I used the word at the start of the show, stifling. And part of the stifling is the fouling.
But even just to get a breath.
Yeah, exactly.
They get 6 decisions on the bounce, I think it is, in the second half, and it frustrates the hell out of the crowd. Maybe one, you go the other way, but just after they get their first one, the first one they get, I think Sadio Mane's kicked 5 feet in the air. It's the most blatant foul. Did it come across on the TV like that, by the way? It was ridiculous. I mean, anyway.
But I don't think... I've seen a lot of people saying, the home crowd were quite intense and quite unhappy with the officiating and made it known, but having watched the game and then watched it back, I don't think there was much at all for them to be annoyed about. If I'm a Brighton supporter, I'm actually sitting there thinking, actually, again, you've stopped this, or partially stopped this juggernaut of a team that are sitting at the top of the table, that are very, very hard to break down themselves and have such an array of attacking talent. I'm coming away proud of that Brighton team who have had an amazing season, who have been so strong at home, and who made Liverpool work incredibly hard to get that goal.
I think that's what Houghton says post-match as well. He's in stuff like that, he's proud of them, and he basically is very open and honest. It's the same as at Anfield. He says, we were just trying to hang on in. We just wanted to still be pretty close to them with 10 to go and see if we got something. And that's,
it's interesting that he takes Murray off, though. Do you know, because if he'd have played, and only brings on, and he takes Murray off, and you think, if that was the other way around, you could imagine the crowd getting up for a Glenn Murray coming on.
I think he actually picks them the wrong way around.
Yeah, I do. I absolutely think he gets it wrong. I wonder whether he thought, we're going to get loads of change out of Fabinho here. We'll put it into Glenn Murray. But they never really just got the ball wide and got a ball in. And
that was down to, I think Liverpool defended that well. I think we made a very specific decision not to risk committing fouls in wide areas, say just 10 yards inside the half, so they could bend one in and put those 2 big boys in. Is it Duncan Duffy?
Yeah, well, Mel mentioned, didn't she, like how good they've been in corners and stuff like that. They are the 2 most head-the-ball centre-halves, and that in a sort of, in a literal way, they win everything in the air. But we were talking on the way out, weren't we, about the difference between them and the next level up, obviously, which is the Van Dijk level of centre-half, where they've got it all on the ground, but everything in the air. You can see why there's such a threat, but I just don't think they used it, I
know what you were saying. This, for a while I hadn't sort of seen proper English centre-halves, ones who are really good at one thing, doing their craft so well, and they were. You see the ball come in and bang away every time, every ball.
They love clearing it, don't they?
Beautiful. But you know what, when it was...
Works, though.
But that's when we were behind the goal, where we had them up close. First half we have Van Dijk up close, and Fabinho to an extent. This is what I'll talk about Van Dijk. The genius of Van Dijk is he is a grok. I know he's big, but he can do all that and then all the other stuff. But it's amazing at what level he's at, because they are world class at just fucking that ball off with their head. That's all they do. But
20 out of 20 on Championship Manager for fucking it off with your head.
But Virgil gets there too, and he's silky.
Yeah, I don't think they didn't use their aerial ability to the extent that they could have. I think they just weren't allowed to. I think they tried a lot of times to target Fabinho with Murray in and around, whether it was, putting the ball in the air or getting Murray to hold it up around Fabinho, but I thought he dealt with it well. I think he won all 3 of the aerial duels he was involved in. Obviously, you don't even have to talk about Virgil van Dijk in the air. But I thought the pair of them dealt really well with everything Brighton sort of had to give. And again, I'll make the point that I thought Brighton tried to give absolutely everything. So their fans should be happy with that performance.
If Matip had come back and been available for selection, Paul, and he put that performance in that Fabinho puts in, we'd all say he's played well there, Matip. Certainly coming back off the back of his injury. I think that's the context of the Fabinho performance, that you were able, as the game wore on more and more, to sort of forget this was meant to be a bit makeshift. And if anything, you began to think, hang on, there could be something in this. I was really, really pleased with him, and I enjoyed him battling with Murray. And I was really pleased, but across him, Henderson, Van Dijk, there was just a seriousness about them. They were serious men who were very much not going to let anything go wrong here today. And I thought that was just great to see, what you were talking about before, about that level of maturity.
That triangle works. Fabinho, a centre half, looked like a centre half. As much as I think he's a good midfielder, he doesn't not look like a centre half. He doesn't look like a a holding midfield player playing centre half. He looked like a centre half. He was even in, do you know, like the motion and the way they step out and stuff like that. It's almost like that Liverpool line all season has been spot on. It's just like Fabinho's just slotted in. Yeah, we're one unit again. It felt fine, and it was mature from the three of them. But if Matip was there, I don't even know whether I'd change it. You know,
it's just that you want Fabinho in midfield really now, because I was saying to you earlier, Neil, he whetted my appetite for having him back in midfield because I think he's a really fantastic player.
Absolutely. But with Palace at home at the weekend, you go, when we're on the ball and going forward, it's like having the chance to overload a little bit. You know, but I think Brendan Rodgers was a huge fan of that, where you just try and get as many players that could overload as possible. So where Liverpool would be in the ball, it's like having another midfielder on the pitch. But off it, he felt just like a centre half, where I don't think Joe Matip would have done any better than him.
The great sadness of the Wolves selection now, Mel, is I really would have loved to have seen Henderson and Fabinho both playing centre-back next to each other. Genuinely, like that if the manager was saying, and we take him at face value, that was what his selection was going to be before Henderson got a little problem, I'd have been fascinated just to see how that would operate in a game like that. And there is something in against the poorer sides, maybe the idea of Fabinho back there, certainly whilst we're waiting for Gomez to come back to fitness, and then maybe he's even as an option to rotate him.
The interesting thing Jurgen Klopp said afterwards, you know, on that point, is Brighton weren't attacking all the time, so it made sense to have a ball-playing midfielder at centre-back. So, to your point, it's something that he would do.
And that's my point as well.
He would do against sides that he knows, you know, are looking to be obstructive more than they are enterprising. I thought Fabinho was excellent in everything. Just on the ball, which there was no surprise there, but I think he makes 5 clearances, which is the most. 2 important blocks as well. I thought he was in the thick of everything when he needed to be, and composed and calm when he needed to be. And he was competitive when he needed to be. So just in terms of everything you would want out of a centre-back in that game, I think he provided it. Still sad that it wasn't McKenna, though, partnering Virgil van Dijk.
Cruising his way through the game.
He felt like a 32-year-old midfielder playing there as well. Though, when you lose, I think he looks older than he is, Fabinho, but you lose sight of the fact of just how young he is. It was. I think. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of people in football go, you put me next to Virgil van Dijk, you look good. He's such a calming presence. But I didn't think there was loads of that going on. I'm sure he controls the defence and moves them out and whatever. But for a reasonably young lad who is a midfielder who's played a bit at right back, I thought it was a remarkable performance. Really mature and one of the lads where you think you could spend the rest of your career there for any Premier League side and you'd be fine.
It might be temptation for Klopp to try him again at something like a home to Palace, just to see, because you look at him on that performance, there's an inkling of saying he could be our third best centre back. You know, he could be the one, if we've got either of Van Dijk or Gomez out, that we go to him before we go to Lovren and Matip. I don't think it's that far fetched to say that's a possibility.
I think that could be the case if you expect to have more of the ball. If you like,
it depends on the opposition and.
I just think we don't know fully actually how good he is. I mean, we need to see him against an Aguero running at you, for example, and twisting into, I know that's the highest level you can face virtually, but coming up against people who want to play aerially and you're a big lad, that may be less of a test than nippy.
But Glenn Murray away at Brighton is a test in itself.
It is a test, and he passed that test. I'm just saying there are other tests.
Yeah, absolutely, and more mobile, certainly, and they're the ones where you'd imagine would be the more difficult.
That's why I would have gone with Andone for 60. I think that if you're I think it's interesting. I think he always subs Murray. I think you know better than me, but he tends to always sub Murray around 60, 65. But I think that, but he's been doing that with Andone, and I wonder if in hindsight, if you could ask Houghton if he would sort of think, you know what, maybe I should just have gone the other way and had the idea of 60 minutes of the movement and then 30 minutes of the presence.
You'd imagine more of a test this weekend, wouldn't you, that, say, Wilf Zaha plays on him and he's running them. Then that would be a different one, and maybe then you go, oh, he does look like a centre midfielder playing centre half. But I didn't get the vibe that he was ever putting himself in situations where he was ever going to be exposed, whether that be aerially on the ground. you know, they bring...
He's a fullback, actually, by training or whatever. So you'd actually think he'd fancy himself in a foot race, wouldn't you?
Makes that number 3 shirts making more sense as time goes on.
As it was, I want to talk a little bit about Firmino, Rob. In that, I don't think he does anything tremendous in this game. He has the shot when he could maybe feed Salah in. I actually think the argument is he should take it another couple of strides before he strikes it, but he strikes it when he does. He's not demanding. He's not, it's not as though it's a performance that we're meant to be praised into the skies. But I thought he looked like someone who's now settled into that role. I thought he was constantly available, constantly involved, harrying when he had to. And that was the bit that most impressed me. I think, he's tracking back all over the place and he's aware of when he needs to, because we might be a man light. I just thought he was helping that shape work massively. I mean, it wasn't like there was any point where we felt like we were a defender light.
No, I thought he had a good game. I think, did you say afterwards, Paul, he was your man of the match? I think you did.
Firmino, yeah.
Yeah, we came out quite effusive about him, and yeah, I thought he was really, really good. I liked how when we're trying to sort of control the game in another way, second half, take it away from Brighton, how he pulls left and he links with Milner and Robertson, and we're beginning to open them up on that side. I think that bit where he's danced, he almost reprises his not PSG, whose goal he scores, the Arsenal goal where he tiptoes through them. No, I thought he was, if not made peak Roberto Firmino, I thought that was quietly one of his most efficient games.
For me, I thought he was magnificent. I was surprised when I seen that you put in the agenda that you thought that it wasn't a great performance, but a good one. I thought it was a great performance from him, and maybe it's stuff that you see a bit more in the ground than on the telly or something like that. But the whole sort of energy in Liverpool and the willingness to just recycle possession was all through him, and he was so clever in terms of taking people away. All the things you sort of come to expect from him, but you should never take for granted either. He is such an intelligent footballer, and I think he's been through a bit of a difficult spell, and he's roared back from it. And I thought this one was about as good as it gets in terms of a number 10 who doesn't score. Thought he was creative, 1 and 2 touch linking up, keeping us. If the ball went wide, he'd link up with the fullback. It wouldn't necessarily be the wide, like it wouldn't be Mane or Salah. He would be the one who'd cover either side.
Mel, I was actually about to say, I think he doesn't half help Mane and Shaqiri through the game in different ways. He does a lot of the work for them at times. It's now, those times last season where arguably he was doing a bit of Salah's work for Salah a little bit and letting Salah cheat at times. Now he's almost added Mane and Shaqiri into that list of just footballers he's just helping out through the game, and I thought you saw a lot of that against Brighton. Yeah,
I think Klopp referenced it as well. Firmino, guiding players through the game or guiding the attacking players through the game. I thought, we spoke about maturity. I thought his performance encapsulated it. It was so intelligent all throughout, even when Liverpool weren't forcing the game or were happy to just keep things ticking over. So was he. When Liverpool looked to step it up, he was the one that, along with Salah, stepped it up. And his ability to do the very simple things that make a world of difference to this team is just astounding. And I think that's why, even when, the outside world are saying Firmino's off it or Firmino's not really doing much, the manager's always the first to say, you have no idea how much he's doing for this team.
Absolutely, and that's it really. He's the sort of footballer you appreciate when he's your own footballer. We're singing he's the best in the world, Roberto Firmino, and people are going, well, he hasn't scored that many goals or something like that. It's not about that. It's not about that whatsoever. It's about everything he does. And yeah, he protects play. He is the most selfless footballer in the world. I feel that at sort of an elite level, he's so happy to just help everyone through a game. But I thought, as an example performance of what he does that you don't necessarily see in a match of the day show reel or whatever, that's the one you look at.
He's the most, do you know what, quietly, for a sort of a selfless, the way people describe Firmino, this selflessness, his team ethic, his bringing people to all these sort of adjectives we use around him, it always gets lost what enormous level of technique he's got. Yeah. I don't think I can remember such a sort of a giver, if you like, of a footballer who's blessed with that amount of quality, because normally with that quality comes a sort of selfish single-mindedness too, that I am going to be the guy who you are going to build this team around. He's able to sort of just park some of that at times, but just little moments in every single performance.
His touches sometimes are godly.
The way he controls the weight of things is quite interesting. So his little layoffs, or the way he can fizz it, it's completely. He's got like different gears that he just shifts through constantly, and if it needs to be soft and subtle, he can do that. But if it needs to be hard and fast, he can absolutely up the tempo and play 1-2 touch really quickly. Brilliant performance.
We'd have all liked it to be a bit more clinical, I think, after it goes 1-0. I think that's, if you are the manager, you've got a couple of notes, that could be one of them. And I don't just mean clinical in terms of take the chance when it falls to you, as you could say about Salah, but instead clinical in terms of make ever so slightly better decisions, better
ball
time.
Before the chance,
Ball before the chance. I think that's probably all fair if we're looking for things to pick at.
Yeah, and I think, the sort of 1-0 Liverpool narrative is like the 5th or 6th 1-0 of the season, something like that, which is not something we were used to before, and isn't happening, I think, because we're just ruthlessly waiting for our one chance, getting it, shutting up shop like vintage George Graham Arsenal. I think it's because at times we've been a little we are much better at defending, but we've been at times more profligate in front of goal, maybe a little unluckier as well this season. That's sort of a perverse irony to that, because when you win a few games 1-0, those from outside go, Liverpool a bit spawnier this season, but that's not the case.
I'd quite like to see, obviously the Salah miss is one in isolation, and he would normally bury that. He didn't even seem to be particularly concentrating when that came at him. But the one where Wijnaldum's at the edge of the box, I'd like to just see him fire that in a way where
Wijnaldum, that,
yeah,
isn't it?
And that they're just the little ones where they go, well, there's your opportunity to chip in and make that 2-0 and put the game to bed. Or these are the ones where I don't think we get enough, and that's why some of these 1-0s have not been 2 and 3, because we're always looking to the same couple of lads to be completely ruthless. And Salah does his bit, and I think we speak about Firmino, and I don't think it's Mane's greatest day, but I thought he was all right. But then you go, I want a bit more. I want 5 more goals from Wijnaldum, and I want 5 more goals from Henderson. And I think, don't get me wrong, they do the lion's share of other stuff, but if they could just add that to us, it'd be completely different to that look out of the 1-0s.
I think if you have a Shaqiri off the bench, you probably get a goal, an extra goal there. But you have Milner off the bench, who I think did really, really well when he came on. But he's not got an eye for goal, although he's had a great goal scoring season. Not quite the same sort of eye for goal.
There was one he was heading through Milner, and he just couldn't quite get the ball to him in the middle again. This pass before the pass thing he was in. He'd made the run. He'd done everything right, and he was just going to convert it, but either it just doesn't quite get through to him, or
that could be praise for Brighton, though, couldn't it?
Well, I think there should be praise for Brighton. They did well, Mel.
The opportunities that Liverpool have missed this season, when you go through, when you think about Huddersfield away, when you just think the amount of times it could have gone from 1-0 to about 4-5 quite easily is actually staggering. It surprises me that they haven't yet perfected the counter and haven't got it as sleek and as sure as it can be. But I think it's improving, and it is coming. The Wijnaldum chance, the way they carve that out is very, very good. I think Salah definitely wasn't expecting the ball to come to him.
And he hit him very hard.
Yeah, and he wasn't ready to receive it. But I think when we look at the scoreline, it's easy to say Liverpool didn't really do much in an attacking sense in the game, but there was a lot of chance creation.
It wasn't a 1-0 game, if you watch it back. It's a bit anomalous that it is 1-0.
Last little thing before we move ourselves along. Just want to talk about the fullbacks. One of them was the knock before the game. Brighton, as I say, I'm going to talk about it a lot in the review. I'm going to come back to a couple of these themes on the review, Paul, but I've never seen a 4-5-1 be as narrow. It was unbelievable how narrow they were out of possession, that they were stopping Liverpool from getting through the middle, because the space at times Robertson and Alexander-Arnold had, and they were just playing their own game for a period, pinging the ball to each other on a couple of occasions. The space is just unbelievable, but that again tells you that this is part of how Brighton were dealing with Liverpool.
Yeah. I thought Robertson was great, but the big surprise in the game was the lack of sort of. Brighton must see what we were saying in terms of Trent not being able to run particularly freely, and they never really took advantage of that. But I thought Trent got himself through the game, and I still can't believe he did a full game. So he got through so well, and he was in so much space so often, and I wonder whether they thought, oh, he's slightly wounded, so maybe leave him. But leaving Robertson is foolish.
Well, he makes the game's first really good, nearly a really good chance. That whipped ball in, and Firmino's like inches away from connecting with it on the back post.
Yeah, I thought both of them were pretty good. I mean, what was your original question, Neil? Sorry, I've lost
the amount of space that they had and how they used it.
Yeah, but we've found a lot of the ball in them areas. I mean, I think they were sort of happy to have it. I thought Bong did quite well at left back in terms of dealing with threats down that side, but Trent seems to be having a lot of his joy just sort of outside of the box from about 20 yards out, putting balls in from there rather than really getting to the touchline.
All really pleasing stuff. They were indeed both excellent. As we've been doing this throughout the season, we're recording this before Manchester City play against Wolves, Rob, but Tottenham lost. They lost to a resurgent Manchester United, whose goalkeeper was exceptionally good. But I think firstly that this is the importance for us of being back on track, really, in that, you know, it now looks, and it's you know, you shouldn't say anything, you should be careful, etc., but it now looks like a bigger and bigger hill for Tottenham to climb in terms of the number of fixtures, what they've got left, and all that sort of stuff. We are very much back on track with that performance and result.
Yeah, again, you'd loathe to tempt fate and say Spurs are now, that's them done, but that is them done. They're 9 points adrift, and they've got to come to the Etihad and Anfield, and that's not going to help them in any sense whatsoever.
They're only not done if they win both. That would be my
Let's put it this: they've got to step it up and go on an incredible run. And it's not the reason they're done is they would need both Liverpool and City to seriously disappoint predictions, and I don't think that's going to happen. They may still get second, if you know, that could happen if one of us falls away, but I don't think they've got enough with that kind of points gap to get to the very top again. To me, yesterday's result was absolutely perfect. I wanted a United victory, but I wanted one which was tainted by the fact that they were played off the park, and they were played off the park. So that Ollie keeps his job. United don't really get any better. It's wins all round.
Tottenham have an ability to continuously, when you think they can't do something, they're able to do it. I mean, for them to even be third and have kept pace with Liverpool and City, or be just off the pace without having invested in the summer with, you know, all the issues, the stadium question being unanswered, their ability to just find solutions, it has been remarkable, but I think it's just too much for them at the moment. There's fatigue. They don't have enough midfielders or, you know, options to rotate between them. The players are extended. They're, you know, still competing on all fronts. Now they've got the Harry Kane injury, which, you know, seems to be an ankle issue. Robbie Keane was saying when he's had that, it looks like a 3 or 4 week. Son is going to the Asian Games.
The all fronts thing's important, isn't it, Mel? With them more so than City can almost park the League Cup and FA Cup for a second string if they want to.
Yeah.
But the narrative around Pochettino and this trophy winning thing, he can't really park those competitions.
Yeah, I don't think actually for him, I don't think that trophy talk gets. I think he's got clarity in his head, just as Jurgen Klopp does, in that, for example, winning the League Cup doesn't really change much for a football club, you know, for an elite football club.
Reality, no.
Yeah. But, competing in that Champions League, finishing as high as possible in the league, those are the things that, you know, when you're recruiting, those are the things that players look at. Players from abroad in Europe don't care who won the League Cup. They don't even particularly know most of the time.
I was like that Klopp, like when he discovered the semi-final was 2 legs. I was like, are you people kidding? Are you honestly kidding? Is this a joke? We play that over 2 legs? I think there's an element of that, isn't there?
Yeah, but so I think he knows what the priorities are. It's just that City have the luxury of being able to field a second string side that still looks like a very, very, very good first team. And Spurs just don't. Spurs squad is so thin. And, you know, whenever they progress...
Is it that thin? Yeah. I always thought theirs was more balanced than ours in a certain sense.
No, it's very thin. They don't have... I mean, you saw against Chelsea and then you saw against United that when Spurs are a little bit jaded because of workload and stuff, it you can tell. in that first half yesterday, they had all of the ball and stuff, but United looked dangerous every single time they were in possession, and that's because of the speed. They just looked a lot sharper, fitter, fresher, and they were, because they've, gone away, had a break, had a chance to work on things. And I just, Pochettino is an excellent manager, but I don't think with all these things stacking up, I can't see how he pulls more magic out of the hat.
I think it's a strange thing, Paul, where the Spurs squad, and I'd sort of take Rob's point, and sometimes if you just sort of did the list, but it's stuff like Wanyama's not kicked in.
Yeah, that's literally.
And you can say, so you got Wanyama, so that's great. Dembele is basically, I mean, he looks like he's going to go to China, but he's basically spent this season saying, I don't fancy another season of this, it's too hard.
He said it in the summer, didn't he? And because Pochettino literally couldn't sign I think he wanted Kondogbia in the summer, couldn't get him. And that was going to be the pass for Dembele to go, but the Wanyama one is the thing. They look like, Wanyama looks like he's back, and then he's not. They seem to get like Lamella's back, but then he'll have 3 weeks out, or Lucas Moura is fit, firing 3 weeks out, and then they've got difficulties with Son only being half available.
Okay, but if you just we'll finish the list of their ace front three was for a while Kane, Ali, and Eriksen. Behind, and they can add a body, and their cover front three was then Son, Lamella, and Moura. We haven't got. Okay, you could say our front three are better than their front three, but we haven't got that level of cover.
But Eriksen and Ali out of that list are arguably playing deeper.
Yeah. I know that. Yeah, I know.
Eriksen's
now basically
playing centre mid. I mean, they're playing with this little weird diamond. But this is because they can't, for instance, go Wanyama, Dembele, and then have two behind them, and then rotate all up front. This is what's happening to them, because even the lads that they have got, where they have got a little bit of depth, these footballers themselves aren't fit, and
that's an issue.
And I would say as well, they probably know that before a ball's kicked this season. I don't believe there's many surprises here. They know.
Yeah.
They know where this is.
That's what I'm saying. For them to be third, and for them to have been even in the conversation for the title with the City and Liverpool teams, it blows my mind, and I don't think they get enough credit. And people always go, that's so Spursy. It's not Spursy what they're doing. It's remarkable.
Spursy is ridiculously consistent. They've got a fantastic mentality.
They've lost 6 games though. They haven't drawn a single game, which I found fascinating. After 22, they either win or lose. But they've lost 6. Liverpool have lost 1, and it's the games where, I think Mel's right to say, it's the games where they just haven't got anything. I think Spurs, when they're fully fit, will beat most sides in Europe. Not most sides in the Premier League, most sides in Europe. And the issue is that they're running the same 11 lads in 4 comps every week. So even Tranmere, Son's playing, Kane's coming off the bench. They've got lads like Skip and Foyth and stuff who are now becoming household names. Sissoko's playing every week. Harry Winks is playing every week, and that they were the lads where, because at least these lads were the ones that were on the bench supplementing it. But now they're the 11. They've got nothing to dip back into further that, apart from Walker Peters, Foyth, Skip, all these lads that we've seen in the past.
All right then. Last little bit before we let everybody disappear off. All 3 of the front 3 effectively play the 90 minutes. It's not quite that, Mel, but it's pretty close to that with the manager there. Keita, by the way, has probably undone the likelihood of Klopp making certain changes, not just for Keita, but in general, for the next couple of weeks. There with that, good lord. I can see, Klopp. That's why Klopp's probably thinking to himself, that's why I don't make those changes. But that aside, the front 3 point is that they get the vast majority of the game, all 3 of them, and I think that's now what we're going to see whilst they're fit. I think given the breaks that there are between the matches, the manager will think, I may as well just have my best lads on there.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole point of, not being in any of the... what we're speaking about, Tottenham, they don't have any options. They're now spread incredibly thin, and they're put in a compromising situation, whereas Liverpool now have freedom, freshness, and the thing with the massive breaks is, I think we referenced this before, Manchester City might have, the rhythm, but then if you're playing with consistency, that 11, and I think Liverpool have only used a pool of probably around 15 players in, regularly enough, but I think he'll go back to, you guys are my 11, pending, changes might be on the opposition, might be depending on an injury or whatever, but that's
I think we're
it.
going to find out what his midfield is. That his fantasy. I actually don't think he knows it, but I think he's got an opportunity to go. I like these three lads best.
I think he's actually got clarity in his head over what midfield he wants for what sort of tests, and I think that's what we've seen. It's not that you are my
opposition.
only midfield. He's like, you are my midfield when I need more stuff on the ball, or when I think that the only way to win this game is by in an aggressive attacking way, and you're my midfield where I need a little bit more experience, a little more. You need you to be a little more
I think
risk
there's two
averse.
midfields. There's the assertive. We're going to have all the ball midfield, and there's that we've got a battle on our hands midfield.
Yeah,
it's
I think he changes it based on the opposition. I don't think, and he's got the luxury to. He can, and I think he's got complete confidence in all the midfielders, but complete confidence for different sort of tasks.
I think his options all make sense now. Where in the summer you were trying to pick a regular sort of one dynamic that one size fits all midfield, and it's not that at all.
He's not interested in that.
No,
He's not being interested in that. By the way, he's not stumbled onto this. I think he's got what he wanted.
Yes, it's tactical flexibility, and that's maybe something where I don't ever think we give the manager. We always talk about the manager being a great man manager and motivator, and he's great with an arm around. But I think actually as a tactician,
read my articles.
I'll take you off mute.
I still think if he's got, let's look at City, Fernandinho, Silva and De Bruyne, he picks them fit 8 out of 10 and does what Guardiola does, just bring Gundogan in when he's playing Liverpool. Do you know what I mean? I do think he wants to reach that point. Why wouldn't you? Of course, you want an abundance of riches. Let's put it this way. I think he'd like a world class.
I think he does.
No, I think
He'd love world class.
I think he knows this league isn't one size fits all, and that's where I think he. If you look, well, no, I think there's 6 or 7 sizes, and I think the Shaqiri one is where it's now all makes sense a little bit what he was looking for.
But also, I think that we do this thing where we go, if we could have world class. Well, I think he thinks he's got. I think he thinks he's got world class, and I think that this is where this conversation is frustrating, and will probably be frustrating for him to some extent, because you go, well, hang on, they've dropped 9 points all year. And they got to the Champions League final last year. At what point do we get to say, you know what, they're actually really, really good?
Hang on, look, you mean title-winning sides, and we haven't won a title yet. Had Darren Fletcher and Young-See Park in. No, I'm going to say, well, I'm not damning. There's European top 10 class, which some of our lads are approaching, and then there's just extremely good. I'm just saying you could like to have a Gerrard or a. I know there's ridiculous aspirations in some reasons, so it's ridiculous to have a Salah and a Mane in the same team as well.
No, I don't. I think it's down to what it is that he wants and thinks that they are. And I do think we do this thing sometimes where we overrate what other people have got. Like for instance,
I think we overrate what we've had in the past. So I've watched midfields of Gerrard, Mascherano and Alonso go and lose at Portsmouth, but I don't you don't see this of Wijnaldum, Henderson and Fabinho or whatever. And this
Gerrard, Mascherano, Alonso is a better set of 3 than we have at the moment. It just is. I mean, maybe history, some of them will evolve, like Fabinho and Keita, maybe Henderson is, which maybe eventually. But right now, that 3 is better than what we have. If you could give me an all-time of the last 10 years, I put those 3
Here's the thing, though. The manager doesn't look at, here's what Liverpool had in the past, or here's what Liverpool can have in the future. He looks at what he's got, and he has what he has, and I think he's used them very, very well. And he's been very smart this season, and I think it's a supporter thing to want, this is our best 11, this is our best midfielder, this is our best whatever. And I think there's certain things that you can't argue with. Virgil van Dijk is the best centre-back Liverpool have. He's the best centre-back in the league. He's the best centre-back in Europe for me.
And Matt Hummels.
That's unarguable. And then, but you have the other things that he feels that he can play around with, People didn't expect Shaqiri to be playing as often as he has, or to be as decisive as he's been in so many games. But it's because he fits, and they knew he fitted. And they've got all these different ideas. I don't think he looks glowingly, at Man City. And obviously every manager will be like, they've got it easy. They've got it easy because they've got so many quality players.
He takes Kevin De Bruyne off Guardiola tomorrow.
But of course he does. I don't think he sits there every day in envy of it.
No, I didn't say he did.
But also, I think if you're Guardiola, you would take arguably any of right now Fabinho, Henderson, Wijnaldum.
He'd have them in his squad definitely.
As lads who'd be getting not just in the squad, they get a hell of a lot of games.
I think Wijnaldum plays very, very regular for Man City if he's there. Very regular.
And I think that right now they're thinking and genuinely they'd be thinking to themselves, we'd be 6 to 9 points better off if we had one of those lads. I think Henderson, Fabinho and Wijnaldum are your 3, where I think if you're Guardiola right now, you're thinking, if I could just be able to rotate them with one of Fernandinho and one of Bernardo Silva every now and again, how much better off would we be? And I don't think then there'd be City supporters saying, so what's his first 11? And that's my point here, is we're not quite clear what his first 11 is. Is it this or is it this?
It's first 15, I would say, and I think Klopp's the same, where Naby Keita. Well,
we have a first choice front 3. We have a first choice goalkeeper. We have a first choice back centre-halves with us.
No, we don't.
Well, we do.
We don't.
We nearly do. When Gomez
here's the thing. That's what we're saying. There are some things you can't argue with.
Yeah.
And he's happy not to argue with those things because it's ridiculous to argue
I'm with
it.
Klopp here, by the way.
Yeah, but with
midfield,
midfield, for different opposition, you need
given the
different
resources
things.
we have, 100% agree. I'm not sure where we feel like there's an argument about it.
I think your argument is you think he would love to have a first choice midfield 3 who are theoretically head and shoulders above everything else, that we could all sit round and go, that's world class. I don't think he wants that. I don't think he does want that, because I think one of the things he wants to be able to do is to make consistent changes in the middle of the park so that they can do everybody else's running for them. And he'd rather have a spread of options. And then there's something else that goes on, I think, which is that we talk down the lads who've dropped 9 points all season. No. And what we do is we sit around and we go, oh, I'm not sure about him, I'm not sure about him.
I've seen Gini Wijnaldum get people on Twitter saying he's not good enough for this Liverpool team, and I think to myself, what have you been watching? What have you been watching?
The glass is half full. Anyone who's not seeing it like that is a fool, because for all those reasons. But every time you go into the market, you can look at a position and go,
I think you can always try and improve, and I think that's the
that's all I'm saying.
But you can always try and improve, but I think that there's trying to improve, and then there's going out of your way to act as though there's something missing.
There's not a problem there. No.
But also when they may well be following the instructions that the manager gives them, which I think again is sometimes where I think especially Henderson and Wijnaldum end up getting criticism. I think at times they're doing what the manager wants them to do. There's times where Wijnaldum drives me mad because I don't see him touch it for 15 minutes, and then the manager comes out post match and says, I really like Gini's performance today.
Closed every passing lane going. Yeah.
Sound Echo, you've got a cop for that, mate. There's nothing you can do.
I think there's 6 lads in the side where he sort of hangs his hat on. The front 3 and the left back, left side of the centre half, and the goalkeeper. And I think the sort of right side, were you saying that he's got a back 5 solid? I don't think he has, because there was games where people were saying
4 or 5.
Joe Gomez would absolutely start next to Trent, and Klopp was like, no, Lovren centre half, Gomez right back, or that's it, I think. And then the 3 in the midfield, I don't believe there's a set 3, but I do think it's one for an opposition.
No, there isn't set 3.
The other thing as well is Fabinho and Naby Keita are young, and I think as they both progress, we've seen Fabinho progress at a rapider rate than Naby at the moment, but they're looking and they're thinking, freaking hell, for 5-6 years here, this is a very, very, very good midfield duo.
With Oxlade-Chamberlain still to come back.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the development of Chamberlain, Keita and Fabinho, whilst you've got that bedrock around them, is a fantastic potential thing for Liverpool.
Okay, thank you very much to Rob Gutmann, Paul Senior and Melissa Reddy. It's been the Anfield Wrap in association with RedsBet.